IVM.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. I guess it's not just this week's episode, it's this week's second episode, because if you haven't yet seen, we're now doing 2 episodes a week for the course of this IPL, which is awesome. So be sure to go check out the previous episode where we released midweek, where we talked about the first few games of the week, excuse me. I'm your host this week, Ashwin, and I have a full house. So DJ is joining me from the UK, Varun is in Singapore. Guys, how are you doing? Varun, have you been able to stay awake late watching the games, etc., or has it been getting more and more tiring?
Yeah, it's starting to get a little tiring, but I do keep the score on Crick Buzz when I'm just getting to bed. And I think 3 times now there have been 30-run overs, which have forced me to get out of bed, come back to the living room and put on the match.
Nice. DJ, what about you? The timing's a little bit easier, but we are 15, 16 matches in. Is your work productivity still dropping off after 3 p.m. and picking back up at the other times of the day?
Yeah, it's been a great IPL. I feel a bit stressed these days during the game times. I mean, the games have been pretty stressful somehow. I don't know why. There've been lots of talking points. There's been lots of controversy. Of course, fantasy isn't going well for me, so that's kind of keeping me up at night. But we'll come to that later in the show, right?
Yeah, so what I can say for certain is it's been a stressful week for Delhi fans. Although we're doing okay on the points table, we haven't made it easy on ourselves. And I specifically say that because stay tuned for the second half of the show. We have some awesome Delhi fans joining us, continuing with our theme of doing one team per week. We're going to have Delhi this week, so stay tuned for that. But for now, we're going to do a quick recap of where we are and talk about the IPL so far. So let me start with you, Varun. About 2 weeks in, if somebody told you Delhi would be, I guess at the time of recording, the second from the top. But there's a little disclaimer that we have 6 points. Mumbai is ahead of us on 6 points, but they've played one more game. RCB is third. And then way down at the bottom is the team in yellow, is the Chennai Super Kings, played 4 matches, only have 2 points. Would you have believed that if somebody said that to you before the IPL started?
I probably wouldn't. And I think Scott Styrus put it best. He tweeted out there yesterday saying something is going wrong because RCB is number 1 and CSK is number 8 on the points table, and he blamed it on 2020. So I am a little bit shocked. I think it's great to see new teams up there. There was a point where you had Punjab, Delhi, and RCB and Rajasthan Royals as the top 4. So it's exciting, man. But I think the key thing is quality teams know how to structure their IPL performance. It's a long tournament. You're going to see teams like Mumbai Indians, Sunrisers Hyderabad. They're all going to creep back up in the top 4. And yeah, that's the beauty of a long tournament.
Yeah, well said. Good generic commentator statement there by you, right? But
DJ, let me ask you. Bet hedging.
Bet hedging, yeah, exactly. Just making sure you're playing both sides of the story. DJ, let me ask you then. Delhi. So there was a faint moment when RCB was actually at the top of the table, right? We had some RCB fans on last week. Does it mean a lot more to Delhi, Bangalore, and Punjab fans because we are now in our 13th year without a title than it means to Mumbai CSK, who are just kind of like, yeah, sure, winning a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th title would be nice. But do you find that it means so much more to fans of the teams that have never won before?
Yeah, of course. We're so much more nervous, right, when the scenarios are like when we had Delhi playing on Saturday. And it looked at one stage like the Kolkata Knight Riders were going to overhaul that 228 and break the record that had been set a week ago. But I think it means a lot more to fans of teams that haven't had that much success over time. And I think the beauty of being a supporter of a Delhi Capitals, maybe not so much of an RCB, and obviously this is a Delhi Capitals special, right? We don't have those glamour players, so to speak. We've got the Prithvi Shaw, we've got the Shikha Dhawan, we've got Rishabh Pant, we've got Iyer, but they're solid guys, right? They're not the Kohlis and the Rohits. We haven't got the glamour in Delhi anymore in any event. So I think that's the charm of supporting Delhi. It's almost like supporting India in the 90s, right? Like when we won, it meant so much more to us. So I think that's where I am with my support of the Delhi Capitals these days.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think, we'll talk lots more about that in the second half of this show. But since our last episode, we've had 4 games, basically Thursday, Friday, and then the first doubleheader, and then 5 games, I guess, in the Sunday morning game. Varun, let me ask you about the first game, which was Mumbai versus Punjab. Here's how I try to wrap my head around it. Punjab have actually looked really good to me, right? Mayank and Rahul have been solid at the top of the order. Some of the bowlers have stepped up, done well. Shami, Cottrell has looked okay. Mumbai have actually looked shaky in some ways, and that might be a statement you disagree with, but they haven't looked great. And yet Mumbai found a way to get 3 wins, and Punjab is sitting second from the bottom. So in Thursday's game, it was pretty comprehensive. Mumbai put a big total on the board, made 191, but thanks to Rohit's awesome 70, and then Punjab just fell short. But is that fair? Has Punjab looked good and the results just haven't come yet?
Yeah, I think that's an absolute fair statement. I think the performance of Punjab, as all of us have been watching it, they've been standout, right? They've got the bowling, they've got the batting. KL Rahul and Mayank are the top 2 run scorers of the IPL so far. And Ashwin, that's why I kind of said this at the start, right? Where I said, I think the IPL, it comes down to a lot about teams who know how to win and teams who don't know how to win. And I think Punjab is kind of maybe in that transition year where they're struggling a little bit. They've got the right players. They've seemed to have a right, the right coach, the right support staff. They've got a Jonty up there. They've got Nicholas Poor and Glenn Maxwell. But somehow they're just not being able to win. They've got all the right players. And I think it's just about finding out that little bit of secret sauce to how to get them over the line, because they should not have lost the games that they did.
Yeah, I think that's really well articulated. And one of the reasons they fell short against Mumbai was because at the end of 15 overs or so, they were actually looking pretty good. I think Mumbai had 91 or 92 after 15 overs. 101 after 15 overs. And then, DJ, for the second game in a row, they made 89 runs. Mumbai made 89 runs off the last 30 balls. So we talked about this in the last episode, where no total seems unattainable. And we're going to talk about this in the Delhi KKR match. But Kieron Pollard at 5, Hardik Pandya playing at 6. They, combined made 77 runs off just 31 balls, right? How is that going to be the X factor for Mumbai going into the latter stages of this tournament this year?
I mean, it's a super strong middle order, right? And don't forget the IPL GOAT as well. Krunal Pandya has scored 20 or 4 today, but it's such a solid core. And I think the difference has been that Pollard has rediscovered his mojo in that incredible chase against the RCB, where he scored a 50. He's with him coming back into form and bowling as well. God, MI looked like a different side altogether. And that, I think, has been the game changer for them. Pandya as well, he isn't bowling, but he is batting fairly well. And they look so strong down the middle. I mean, that top order has kind of misfired a little bit. De Kock has scored a few runs. Rohit scored a few here and there. Surya Kumar hasn't scored those many. Ishan Kishan has been good this year, and we'll talk more about that. But with Pollard and Pandya and Krunal kind of hitting those big sixes and accelerating towards the end, I think Mumbai are starting to look super dangerous again.
Yeah, I think really well said. I think, for me, Mumbai's bowling has been a little bit less than where you'd expect it to be, but it feels like Bumrah is starting to find his form again. They're starting to manage without Malinga. Pattinson's looking really good to me. So Trent Bolt has always been blown hot and cold for me in the IPL, but an outstanding talent. So Mumbai looking good, like I said, sitting at the top of the table. Varun, let's come to Friday's match. Hyderabad against Chennai. Hyderabad wins the toss. David Warner chooses to bat. It almost feels like, going into the match, we were expecting this, right? If Chennai chases, are they going to be able to keep the run rate up? Where is MS Dhoni going to bat, right? And, no suspense here. I have a few other things to ask, but no suspense here. Hyderabad made 164 and Chennai fell 7 runs short. So Chennai is in this incredible spot where they're at the bottom of the table, but their net run rate doesn't look as bad. I mean, that's better than RCB's net run rate, et cetera. So talk to me about that Chennai chase and what is happening with MS Dhoni. Because you can look at the scorecard and say, well, he ended at 47 off 36, not out again. So his stats look good. But what's happening with the Chennai Super Kings?
Yeah, it's something we haven't seen before. And there are all sorts of comments going around saying, is this the first year that they're not going to make the playoffs? And I believe in Dhoni. I believe he's got a great mind, but somehow I think his body doesn't follow, right? And I think that's what the issue is with the Chennai Super Kings, that they're dealing with a bunch of players who are more like have-beens. You still got people like Faf and Raidu who are coming good. Kedar, honestly, I have no idea. I don't think he deserves a place even in the CSK side. But I think what has happened is Dhoni can guide a team to victory playing second fiddle. I feel like he's lost a little bit of that mojo to be able to take them to victory single-handedly. And he has a particular style. I don't want to get into debate about taking it deep. He likes to go for the last over always, but he's not the same player. His body is not allowing him to keep up. We all absolutely love the fact that he's a fighter. We love and respect that about him. But it's tough for him. And I think CSK needs to, at the end of this season, really probably take a good hard look and say, what is Dhoni's role going to be next year? Who are they going to groom as captain? What is the makeup of the team going to be? And I'm saying this today knowing that, Dhoni still may pull one out and make the playoffs, but I still don't think it's good for the longer term for CSK.
Very, very interesting. DJ, I cannot talk about MS Dhoni without asking you, but let me tell you what it was, right? He came in ahead of where he had in previous games. So I think no argument there that he walked in when, I personally think he should have, but he was at 17 of 22 and then ended up on 47 of 36 in that game. So I'm looking at his stats for the season to date. In the 3 innings, in the 4 innings he's batted because he's been not out 3 times. He averages 91 and he strikes at 135.8. You look at that on the surface and say that's pretty good, right? Dhoni's not the reason for CSK's failures, but is there more to that, more to it than the numbers suggest on their own?
So I think a couple of things. Yeah, go on.
Just before you speak, it sounds like Delhi Capitals has always been good on paper, but they've never won. It feels like Ashwin was reading out Dhoni's stats, which are great on paper, but it doesn't mean much if you're not winning.
Yeah, agreed. No, I agree. They've lost 3 in a row, which last happened, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, right? They still made the playoffs that year, but they are struggling. And to answer your question, Ashwin, on that, he made 47 of 36, right? And he was batting for a long time alongside Jadeja, and we saw both of them struggling. We saw Jadeja get 50 of 35, kind of accelerated towards the end. It wasn't pretty from either of them, and I think more than anything else, I mean, he struggled physically, of course. Jadeja, for a while, he was kind of knocking the single and giving Jadeja a strike, but Jadeja was actually getting them away. But I think more than anything else, what this season particularly has exposed is the gaps that we spoke about last week in their team. Obviously, Raina, Bhaji isn't there. So those guys weren't available. Raidu came back in the last game, but he didn't really contribute. But what it's exposed is how dependent they are on those players that are missing, and also how dependent they are on those home games at the Chepauk Stadium, right? Where their spinners are in play, where they can slow the game down. Dhoni loves controlling the game with spinners, which he isn't really being able to do that much over here. So I think that they are the team that has been affected the most by the shift to the UAE. I mean, as Varun said, I don't think there's anything more to add. Dhoni isn't the 2014, 2015 Dhoni that could single-handedly win a game. So you do see him playing second fiddle to a large extent, and whether he can win a game of his own bat is moot. And then the question comes back, if he promoted, say, Bravo above him, or Karan came in and scored 15 or 5, then the batting order debate starts again, right? So he's in a little bit of a tough spot, caught between a rock and a hard place. Whatever he does, there will be criticism, and that comes if you're not winning. The moment you start winning, everything's hailed as a masterstroke, right?
Yeah. Varun, before we move on, anything to add?
Yeah, and no, I was just going to say, I think DJ had a great point about the UAE, Chennai being the team that's suffering the most. It could be the spinning wickets, it could be the crowd support, but I think that's a great point, DJ, because what often happens is, when the Rainas and Bhajis are missing, overnight they become superstars, just by virtue of not playing. And I personally believe even if they were there, I don't think it would have changed their fortunes too much. So I actually think your point about leaving Chennai and Chepauk, I think that's a really good one.
Can I just ask one more point? What do you think about their team selection? They've gone again with Watto, who in today's game against the Kings 11, which is the bottom of the table clash, right? But do you think that they're just being too stubborn and not changing? And I have a question. I mean, Dhoni is one known to back his players, but is there a limit to that? Ashwin, I'm going to come to you on this one, obviously, because you've got thoughts on selection and captaincy as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I don't think they have an obvious batting replacement, and that's the challenge, right? They've tried Vijay, they tried Gaikwad, who I think should probably get a little bit more time. And so I don't think they have an obvious batting replacement. So what we've talked about a lot is the bowling. Do you need to bring in Tahir, et cetera? So I think, yeah, to your point, kind of fundamentally, I think Dhoni needs to start trying some different things because 4 matches is a lot. And by the way, by the time people listen to this episode, we'll know if Chennai won their 5th match or lost it and are sitting at the bottom still, right? And so that'll also change perception. So I think you're right. There's probably a balance between the captains who change 3-4 guys every game versus a Dhoni who's just doggedly persistent and assumes he'll find form. But hey, we saw Kohli bat himself into form. We saw Warner bat his way back into form. So time helps these players, time in the middle. Maybe Dhoni is just realizing for himself too that he was away from the game for a long time, and so they just needed time. But I want to talk quickly. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, by the way, Priyam Garg made a beautiful half century in the match against CSK for Hyderabad. But I want to come to the next game. So doubleheader Saturday. RCB played the first game against Rajasthan Royals. Devdutt Padikkal comes out, makes his third 50 in 4 games. Varun, let me ask you more generally. Has this been the IPL so far of the young Indian player? I mean, Padikkal, obviously I mentioned Garg had a great one run. Mavi and Nagarkoti looking good, right? Like lots of young Indian guys looking great. Has this been a unique year for that reason?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, firstly, I think you should just clarify that Priyam Garg is not related to both of us, even though all three of us are within the cricket field. But I think apart from that, it's been a great season for youngsters, especially Devdutt. To be honest, I have to put my hand up. I hadn't even heard of him before the IPL started. And today he's come out with 350s. It's a shame that people like Jaiswal, etc., are not getting more games. I think, this is a discussion for another day, but I've been in a lot of discussion with my friends saying the issue in T20 cricket is that everyone's a top order batsman, and including international batsmen who are playing at number 4 or 5, they all have to play opening or 2 or 3. So as a result of that, some of your batsmen are not going to get a great chance, but the ones who do are really grabbing onto it and proving themselves really well. Even Ishan Kishan, right? People like him, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, really well said. So Bangalore Rajasthan was sort of a straightforward game. Rajasthan made 154. Bangalore chased it down and with almost 1 over to spare. Kohli batted himself back into form, like I mentioned. So made a nice looking 72. He started a little slow, but just spending time in the middle. He's just a player of that caliber. DJ, I want to ask you about Sanji Samson. So 2 awesome knocks. All the talk started like, hey, he should be playing for India. India's next wicketkeeper batsman. Get rid of Rishabh Pant. All of this conversation started, and we know Twitter audiences, etc., have short memories, but. What is the stat? Varun, I think, shared a stat, right? That in every IPL, he does amazingly in the first 2 games and then struggles thereafter. So is this a Sanju Samson at Sharjah versus elsewhere thing? Is it a gets off to a race, a really racy start and then slows down? What's going on? What happened with Samson?
So it's you said Twitter probably has a short memory. It's almost schizophrenic when it comes to someone like Sanju Samson, right? It's the inconsistency that we've talked about, which it's a little bit frustrating because people like him, and it goes a little bit to people like Rohit as well, right? They'll make batting look so easy when they're doing well, that when they get out early and they get out cheaply, it almost makes them look like they're lazy and they're not putting in the work. Whereas we know that's not true, because Sanju Samson has come out on public in record and said he's put in all this work, he's worked on his diet, he's worked on his fitness, he's spoken to Kohli, be trying to dedicate the next 10 years of his life to just cricket and then take it from there, right? So I think 2 games, but that also it's the nature of T20 cricket. You're meant to be attacking, you're meant to be playing short, you're meant to play shots in the air to hit sixes. So those thrilling sixes that he's hitting, he's also getting out because there's more risk involved. So I think that's a story of Sanju Samson's career, and to some extent Rishabh Pant's career as well, because they are high-risk batsmen. When it comes off, it's exciting, it makes you sit up and take notice. But when it doesn't come off, you're frustrated and you're like, okay, maybe this guy shouldn't be playing, or why has he played that shot? But it's just their game. And for them to change that, it wouldn't be that exciting for us to watch. So I think that is what's plagued Sanju Samson. He was helped, of course, playing the first 2 games in Sharjah with those ridiculously small boundaries and that batting track, which basically renders bowlers completely meaningless. But I mean, he's a class act, and I think he's going to go on and do well for his IPL franchise as well as for India in due course.
All right, Varun, that's as good a segue as I'll get on any. Talking about a young wicketkeeper batsman who looks good sometimes but flatters to deceive, and talking about the small boundaries at Sharjah. Because on Saturday morning, Delhi played, or morning my time, Saturday's early game, Delhi played Kolkata Knight Riders. 228 on the board. Prithvi Shaw looked great again, made 66. Shreyas Iyer looked magnificent, made 88. But Rishabh Pant, 38 runs off 17 balls, got to 228. I'll talk about the second innings in a second, but is Pant starting to look a little better to you? Or is it just, this is what we expect from him at a ground with small boundaries, and you actually think he should have stayed out there and made more runs?
Yeah, I think this is what we expect on a ground with small boundaries. If he hadn't scored that, I think it would have been a horrible disappointment, because he does hit those shots where he falls over, and he needs small boundaries for that. So I'm not going to give him any praise there. I think once in a few games, if he does it, it's not good enough. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the only good thing I see is he's not trying to hit every ball. So hopefully there's a balance that's setting in. But I think what you can tell is he's overthinking every delivery, right? He's just like curbing himself. And so I don't know how long this is going to last. But I would say improvement, but a long way to go. I also feel like I sound like his school teacher, but yeah.
or his dad.
That's how we feel about this.
Pretty much his dad, right? I think that's what my age group is now. So,
all right, we're almost at time. DJ, I have to ask Kolkata Knight Riders. So they're in the middle of the table, 4 matches, 2 wins, 2 losses. But Delhi made 228. We should have won that by a landslide. Sharjah, no total is safe. It would have been a record chase. It looked like it was almost done. But when you have batsmen like Owen Morgan walking in at 6, Pat Cummins came at 7, Rahul Tripathi, who's an opener, walked in at 8, made 36 of 16 balls. It looked for a minute like they could do it. But an outstanding spell of bowling from Anrik Nortje, the South African quick, who came in as a replacement, remember, for Chris Wokes. I mean, what is KKR doing wrong? Does it feel like this team, when they figure out their batting order, when they figure out the role for Sunil Narayan, and when Russell starts to hit, they look more dangerous than any of us thought?
So I think there were a few problems. One was Sunil Narayan opening the batting, and he hasn't fired this week, but we've already talked about that last week, so nothing has changed on that front. I suspect he's going to be dropped down the order because he isn't doing well. He doesn't do well against pace, and everyone's found that out now. Tripathi came to the party, and wow, what a way to do that. He scored 36 of 16, just incredible batting, and it showed why he was playing. And why was he batted at number 8? That's ridiculous. He's an opening batsman, did brilliantly for Rising Pune Supergiant when he played for them. And all of a sudden, he's batting at 8. It's just absolutely ridiculous under someone like Pat Cummins. Owen Morgan similarly came out, first ball, hit at 6, kind of saying, why am I batting below you, Kartik? And that takes us neatly onto why he was batting under Kartik, who was batting at number 5. I mean, Kartik scored 6 of 8, looked completely out of sorts. And Morgan has got to bat 4 for the KKR. There is no question about that, followed by Russell and then probably followed by Kartik. So I know there was a lot of talk about leading from the front right on our Discord channel with Dhoni, but Kartik is probably leading too much from the front and needs to take a little bit of a backseat and do what he's good at, which is finishing games. We've seen it previously in the IPL where he's played some beautiful knocks down the order, and for India in the Nidahas Trophy, right? So don't know why KKR are trying to change things up, and it is affecting them. So just needs a little bit of input, I think, from his coaching staff, and needs to take a little bit of a backseat, Kartik, because he's a good player and probably just needs to calm down on the tactics front. It's probably overthinking things.
Varun, I have a question for you, but anything to add before I ask you?
No, I think, DJ, it's a good point. I think basically when I look at the middle order, number 3, 4, 5, they're so confused. And DJ, your memory is the best out here. There was some season where KKR went on with a different captain every game as well, right?
Oh, yeah, that's when they had John Buchanan as their... that was a fake IPL player that year.
Yeah.
The blogger.
And McCullum was part of that. I just feel like they're very confused. DJ has laid it out perfectly. I think you got to open with Tripathi, Rana at 3, Morgan at 4, and Russell at 5, right? Then DK. So they got to stop with this confusion. They got to believe in their batting lineup. And I wouldn't be surprised if end of this season for sure DK is dropped, but maybe middle of the season you see Morgan walking in as captain. It's happened before.
So let me just quickly ask you that, right? Varun, 2019, DK averaged 31.6, striking at 146. Not bad. Made 250 plus runs. 2018, he made nearly 500 runs. He'd averaged nearly 50, striking at 147. So are we just being harsh? Like, he's had a tough start like many players have. Why are we being so much more harsh on DK than we are on anybody else?
Yeah, I think we are. We are being too harsh. When a captain says, I want to come up the order, you say, you give him a tough time for that. When a captain says, I'm going to go down the order to let the younger guys go ahead, you give him a tough time. So I think we are being harsh. That's the nature of Indian cricket fans. I don't think DK has done terribly bad, but I think he needs to stand up as a leader, especially when you've got to manage a personality like Andre Russell, and you have to manage a super captain like Morgan. So I think he's going to have to step up. He's going to have to, give away some of the credit. He's going to have to manage the different politics in the team. But I think people are being a little bit harsh on him.
Right. You heard it here. So points table is pretty exciting. Delhi, RCB near the top, Mumbai sitting at the top. It's going to be a cracker of a week. Stay tuned for the second half. We'll come back with some Delhi fans to talk a little bit about the history of one of the least successful franchises, and we'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel. So Jasleen Royal came on Storytellers and Storytellers this week with Vineet. It was a really interesting conversation. Do definitely check that out. Hamsini Hariharan is back on the Pragati podcast after an extended absence. Hamsini was one of the original hosts along with Pravan, but she was unable to continue. But we're glad to have her back. She's talking about her experiences since she left. She's been studying in China. Definitely check that out. You'll enjoy that. On Pulya Bazi, they discussed the revolution of 1857 as seen from contemporary eyes. Definitely give that a shot. I think you'll love that as well. Abhijit Ganguly was on Cyrus Says a couple of weeks ago, and he had such a great time, and we were so happy to have him on that we asked him to join us for Cock and Bull, and he was on this week. Do check that out. And lastly, I'd like to mention our Tamil show. We've been doing a show called Kadai Podcast Punyan Selvan, hosted by Kavita Jiva. She has been phenomenal. She's rewritten the stories in a way which really, they speak to a modern audience. But Punyan Selvan is over, and she started a new story, though. The new story that she started is Sivakamiyan Sabatham. I'm sure I mangled that pronunciation, and I'm sure you'll love it if you're a Tamil speaker. Do definitely check it out. And with that, let's get you onto your show.
Welcome back. And for the second half of this show, we are super excited. Obviously, very passionately, all three of us are Delhi Capitals fans. So we've done 2 teams already. This is our 3rd episode. We are joined by 2 even more, let's call them, passionate Delhi Capitals fans. So joining us on Edges and Sledges today, Achal and Kartik. Guys, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you. We're going to spend the second half of this show talking about I want to say Delhi Capitals, but I still have this instinct to say Delhi Daredevils. Achal, does that happen to you, or are you used to the name now?
All the time.
Kartik, what about you? I don't even have Delhi Capitals merchandise. I have a Delhi Daredevils hat and a shirt that Varun has gifted me over the years.
Always miss Danny Morrison saying double Ds.
Varun, do you want to...
something I always miss.
Varun, do you want to give us a little preview of Danny saying it? How does he say it?
The double Ds and the double Rs.
There you go.
Oh, man.
Super exciting, right? We're now DC, of course. Delhi Capitals. Let's talk about the franchise. So, guys, I'm going to first ask you a little bit about how long you've been listening to our show, your journey with it, and then why you put yourself through the torture of being a Delhi fan. So, Kartik, let me start with you. How did you discover Edges and Sledges, and how long have you been listening to us?
It was, I think, in mid-2019, around the World Cup time, I believe. I used to listen to a lot of IVM shows, and in between, Amit sir used to come and say, this broadcast, there is always a recommendation and I then tuned in, and I just love the way you guys have the banter. There is discussion. It's a fan-based discussion, so always love that aspect. And from then on, I became a fan. Then we had a lot of discussions on Twitter also. I'm from Delhi, so it's a no-brainer to support that team. But after the first 3 seasons, it has been such a heartbreak every season after season. Like previous season, finally we reached the playoffs. It was after 2012, 7 years later, we reached the playoff. It was such a nice experience after so long. We have seen all the lows, so I believe there are only highs left for us to see. So that way this season has started well. Out of 4, we have won 3 matches. So let's see. Maybe we can lift the trophy this year.
I hope you're right. 2020 is going to be Delhi's year. And anyway, lots to dive into there. Achal, let me ask you then, what's your story both with it? I know you've been a long-time listener of our show, but how did you discover the show?
Yeah, I don't completely remember. I think I was looking for podcasts to binge on my way to work, my 40-minute commute. And I found this on Reddit, I think. I think, Ashwin, you had posted like, oh, guys, we just started a podcast, three friends, whatever. So I gave it a listen. Took me like an episode and a half to figure out you were also, at the time, newly DC fans. So it was a no-brainer for me as well. I think one of the things that keeps me kind of attached to the podcast as something that I'm very fond of is just the fact that it feels like I'm listening to my friends talk about cricket, which I really missed after moving to the US about like 6-7 years ago. And it was just like, oh yeah, I'm in the thick of it again. There's like inside jokes. There's inside jokes about cricketers, all that stuff. So it was super fun. Yeah, it's been like, 2.5 years now? This was early to mid 2018.
Nice. And then tell us why Delhi Daredevils.
Oh man, long story. It's like one of those love stories where you're like, kab aayega mera pati ghar. It's interesting. I think I remember being.
It's called a love story or a different kind of film?
Whatever it is, like the image of like you standing on a cliff waiting for your husband to return from war or your partner. I don't know. Maybe I watched too much anime. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Delhi, it's interesting. I don't think I've ever supported any other team as fervently as I have Delhi. And I don't think I've felt as crushed by any other team I've supported. other than Delhi. So, yes, I remember being in high school and GMR, newly having purchased the franchise, put out an ad in every major newspaper, like a half-page ad on the first or second page saying, vote for what you want the team to be called. Should it be called the Daredevil? Should it be called the Delhi Mughals? And we're going to give you a week to vote for this, and then we'll unveil like a giant hoarding at the Kotla. Turns out the Daredevils won, which is thankfully the Delhi Mughals sounds like a pretty crappy name. Also very similar to what the ICL franchise was called.
That's a great story. I wonder from a marketing perspective if they already had the billboard up there and they just pushed everyone to choose Delhi Daredevils.
Made you feel good about it, right?
Given how GMR spent their money in the first 6-7 years they owned the franchise completely, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, it's been supporting them since. The first couple of years were great with Sehwag, AB, Dilshan, even Manoj Tiwari chipping in at the time, young blood. And then it was downhill for a fair bit, some ups, mostly downs. And now, like Kartik said, I'm waiting for, the highs to emerge again because I think this team has it in it to deliver.
Yeah, love it. Really well said. So you got ahead of the next point I was going to make. So Varun and DJ, I'm going to ask you, Varun, you first. It's 2008. You're building a team and somebody says, okay, here's some players. Virender Sehwag, Gautam Gambhir, Shikha Dhawan, Dinesh Karthik, AB de Villiers, Tilakaratne Dilshan, Amit Mishra, Mohammad Asif, Glenn McGrath, Shoaib Malik, Daniel Vittori. It could be an all-time great side, couldn't it?
I mean, I think we won the first IPL, didn't we? What a team that was.
We should have, man. We should have. Unbelievable.
Seriously, I mean, it was unbelievable. It's a great school, right? We send everyone out there to other teams and then they win. So it's a great training ground. It's like university. You come there and then you do great things after that. But it's been difficult. It's been difficult to digest that you had all these players and you still didn't win.
DJ, is this just hindsight? Like you and I talk a lot about the idea that we look back and think something seems so smart because Kartik was 22, Dilshan at AB was 24, right? Dilshan ended up doing really well, but at the time, I don't think he was in his 30s already. I don't think any of us thought, but then he invented the Dil Scoop for T20 cricket and it became a whole thing. DJ, are we just looking back more fondly remembering it or was it just a team that underperformed its potential?
I'm showing you guys what a ticket I put up on Instagram a few years ago. It's the first game I ever watched at the Kotla, which was the Delhi Daredevils versus Chennai Super Kings game. Man, that's when I fell in love with the IPL, dude. I mean, we had all the stars. We had everyone. And we did pretty well. We did pretty well the first year. We did really well the second year when it was played in South Africa, right? I mean, apart from that Gilchrist blinder, we were looking for all money like we were going to win that easily. But then there were some really strange decisions that were made by the management, by the team. We let go of pretty much anyone who's anyone in IPL today has played for the Delhi Capitals or the Delhi Daredevils, right? I know Achal's been doing some research on who we bought and who we let go. He's got a whole notepad full.
David Warner.
AB de Villiers.
Achal, you want to jump in?
Insane.
Who answer these names?
I have a list of maybe 30 names.
Give us your favorites.
I'm just gonna go starting 2008, 2009 all the way up until 2017, which is where the last big rejig happened. So here's just some names. I'll limit myself to 10 to save us the misery. AB de Villiers, Dilshan, Aaron Finch, at the time an uncapped Australian player. He played 2 games, made 55 in 1, 0 in 1. Dinesh Karthik, uncapped Maxwell. And then I'm going to skip a few years, go to 2012, that team that, just got bludgeoned by Gilchrist, but otherwise won pretty much every game. KP, Jayawardene, Ross Taylor, Glenn McGrath, Trey Russ, Morne Mockle, Irfan Pathan.
We had Trey Russ. I forgot about that.
We had Trey Russ.
With fully functioning knees as well. His knees were working then.
2013, we released Maxwell. We released Mishra. 2013, we brought on Viv Richards as our brand ambassador for half a year. 2014, we retained no players. We let everyone go. We brought back JP Dumini, De Kock, Tahir, Ross Taylor, Saurabh Tiwari, Murli Vijay, Dinesh Karthik, Nisham, at the time not as famous on Twitter, KP, Nathan Coulton-Isle at the time 18 years old, Mayank Agarwal. 2015, where we ended up 7th, we had JP Dumini again, captain, Shami, De Kock, Jadhav, Tahir, Mayank, Yuvraj, Iyer, Stoinis, at the time 18 years old. 2016, we ended up 6th We had QDK, Morris. We had Pant and Mahipal Lumror before we released him the following year. Billings, Karun Nair, Khalil, JP Duminy, Iyer, Mayank. And this is also the year Paddy Upton took over as the coach and Dravid was the batting mentor. And then 2017, we released QDK and JP Duminy. And we had a pretty young batting lineup, but this 2017 has only had both Rabada and Cummins in our bowling lineup.
We had Cummins also.
Yeah, but Rabada didn't become a regular until the following year.
I think we've blanked all of this stuff out.
I mean, I have to
blanked it.
That was Achal. That was fantastic. I have to say, your 1 minute segment has to be our social media marketing for this entire episode. What a great list that was, man.
Was it
he's in quarantine as well, by the way, so he's using it really well.
Yeah, but it hurts me in the heart when I read that list out. Holy shit!
It's crazy because some of the names on this list revolutionized T20 cricket. Like I remember Sehwag being one of the first players from like the old guard of ODI specialist cricketers and like test cricketers who really made it big into T20 and like adjusted to the format so well. I think the first 2 or 3 years of the IPL, he was a top scorer consistently. He's still the top scorer for the Delhi franchise to this day. Ridiculous.
Wow. That's crazy, I think. When you start thinking through the history of a Delhi franchise, it is just unbelievable, right? So anyway, despite that, so Kartik, I think we have you back. 2015, we ended 7th. 2016, 27, we ended 6th. 2018, we ended 8th, which I guess is kind of an all-time low for... Well, it doesn't get any lower, right? Top 8. You can say we were in the top 8, but there's only 8 teams. But then 2019, I think 2019 last year was the first year we brought Shikha Dhawan from the Sunrisers Hyderabad, right?
Yeah.
Shreyas Iyer became captain, young team, young captain. Dhawan ends his season with over 500 runs, makes 521. Pant ends his season with 488. Iyer 463. So, Kartik, what was it about 2019 that triggered a turnaround? That Delhi ended 3rd, and you want to win, obviously, but for a team that's been 6th, 7th, 8th consistently, 3rd was pretty good for us, right, Kartik?
What really stood out for me from 2019 was there was a plan. I think before those seasons, there were 2018 was really horrible. I would have not been surprised if Ricky Ponting was sacked after 2018. But there was a hope in the later half of the 2018 season when Shreyas Iyer took over the captaincy. We won the match. We denied Mumbai to reach the playoffs. That was the highlight of the 2018 season. In the end, we managed to do that. So 2019, we brought in Shikha Dhawan to add some experience. There were a lot of youngsters. I think Shikha Dhawan provided the base for many innings, and then the others could accelerate from there. Shreyas Iyer became really reliable as a captain and as a player. Rishabh Pant was prolific as always for Delhi in the IPL. Then we had a good bowling. Renewed Ishan Sharma was there. We have Kagiso Rabada, one of the best out there. Sandeep Lamichhane, who is not playing at the moment, but he was good for us. So there were a lot of things that were going right for us in that season. And Ricky Ponting, again, great coach, great motivator. We saw that Tewatia video also, which went viral after his innings. So I think everything sort of clicked for Delhi in that season. And we managed to make it to the playoffs, which was a good achievement with that side. I think that side still lacks some experience for me in the middle order because after Pant, you really didn't have anyone. They tried Rutherford, I believe, for some matches. It didn't work. Others came, but down the order, you had Kimo Paul, who is a great bowler, but I don't think he's the best batsman to have as a finisher. So there were flaws in the team, and I think finishing 3rd was a big achievement for that team.
Yeah, very well said. Good rundown of 2019. Achal, I want to ask you. So we spend a lot of time talking Iyer, Pant, Dhawan, of course, in that year. 2018 was no Kagiso Rabada year. 2019, 25 wickets, second on the list by 1 wicket. He would have won the purple cap, but Tahir took 1 more wicket than him because he had 5 more games, right? So 25 wickets in 12 matches. Well, has that been the turnaround? And as we're going to come to 2020, but he's had a really good start to 3 out of the 4 games. Was that the big turning point for us?
Yeah, I think so. I think the big thing was sorting our bowling out so that our batting had something to work with. For most other teams, it's the other way around. It's fine if our bowlers get thrashed, our batsmen can keep up, but our batting was inexperienced as well. And we didn't really have that one spearhead, whether it was a spinner or a pace bowler before Rabada came in and did that last season. What's super strange is that we've had Rabada since 2017 and we haven't used him, and we didn't use him like we are now until like 2019, which is a symptom of the larger problem, right? And I just rattled off a whole bunch of names, but it's a similar thing. For example, after the 2012 season, Glenn McGrath left Delhi Daredevils, did not renew his contract because he wasn't getting games. So it's just, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's happened over the years. And every time like something like that's happened, the team management in the past has been like, okay, this is beyond repair. Let's just not retain anybody. Like we've done that 3 times.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, right? Like hopefully the idea that you're starting to back players a little bit more, fix the strategy versus just say, hey, we're out. All the players need to go. DJ, any thoughts on that?
Can I just add one thing on Rabada? I think he has been the game changer for Delhi. And the reason I say that is he's almost the bowling version of MS Dhoni. And I was thinking about this the other day. When it's a man-on-man contest, he backs himself to win that contest, which is why in a super over, he's absolutely incredible. He's done those 2 super overs. And Ashwin, I know you have that Russell Yorker saved on your phone. And like whenever
I watch it at least once a week. I watch the Yorker video that Rabada bowled to Russell probably at least once a week.
Incredible. And and you've also now saved the Puran video, right? Where he's taken his stumps out of the ground. But I think Rabada is actually, and ironically, he burst onto the scene with the wicket of MS Dhoni in a chase. He throttled MS Dhoni when we needed 9 runs to win, and he bounces him out and the ball goes up in the air. And that is when Rabada announces himself on the international stage in a one-day international game against India. And so Rabada has completely changed the mindset of the Delhi bowlers almost. And you've seen it rub off onto Andrik Nokia, right? And I think that has been the big change, because earlier we'd have like Morris or somebody bowling those overs, and those were just, they would just go for lots of runs. So just wanted to build on that point about Rabada, because he's been a massive acquisition for us. And I hope we retain him in the mega auction as it comes up.
I think it should be a no-brainer. So Varun, let me quickly ask you then, 2 weeks into the IPL, sitting just second on the points table, but I always put that at the caveat because at the time of recording this, Mumbai is ahead but has played 1 more game, right? So 3 wins, 1 loss. Varun, if somebody told you that after 4 games, would you take it? Or is that now the expectation we have for this team who came third in 2018?
No, I would take it. I think we need to try and get to top 2 because our record in the eliminators is not great. We need a second chance. I firmly believe that. And so we have to get to top 2. Whatever happens this season, the goal has to be top 2. Give ourselves a second shot, make it to the finals this year. I think that has to be the aim.
Yeah, I will say though, it hasn't been smooth sailing all the way through, right? Let's talk even about the opener. Kartik, I'll come to you. Delhi's playing Punjab. For much of it, it looked like Delhi should win easily. Then it looked like Punjab should win, and Punjab got down to 1 run needed off 3 balls with their in-form batsmen at the crease, and they just fell short. So was that just nerves, jitters? Did Delhi have what it took? And then, of course, Rabada came out, super over, 2 for 2. Like, nobody's ever made less in a super over than 2 runs, and Delhi won it easily. But, I remember watching that first game and saying, shit, pardon my language, we're up for another season of these crazy roller coasters with Delhi. But Kartik, first game, was that the sign of the season to come?
It had everything like we can associate with Delhi. So we do well with the batting. We do well with the ball to an extent. We think we are winning. Then an injury happens, your bowler down. And then they suddenly, Mayank Agarwal fires. Then they are in the driver's seat. You have no hope left. One from 3 balls. Any day you would say the batsman is scoring that. But 2 full tosses and 2 wickets. Nobody can script that. And then the super over, Rabada was awesome. So that's the thing that gives hope. So if we could manage that, maybe this is our season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, right? So obviously since then, beat Chennai pretty comprehensively. I would say Chennai's been looking bad at the start of this tournament. Fell short against Sunrisers Hyderabad, which was tough. Achal, the match we just saw on the weekend, the most recent match, Delhi versus KKR. We talked a little bit about it at the front of the show. But how clutch is it? Okay, it was at Sharjah. Accepted, small boundaries, easy batting turn. But your captain walks out, makes 88 not out of 38 balls. How incredible did Shreyas look yesterday?
Incredible. And I think I'll come back to that, but before we like continue in that thread, I just want to say the template that Kartik just mentioned is so correct. You have your batsmen fire, your bowlers are looking okay, then a bowler injures himself, and then towards the last 3-4 overs you start looking shaky, and by the end of it you're like, nahi ho jayega. which is just
13 years we have lived,
which is just very classic Delhi, right? And I think that both their wins and losses follow a template, and I think it has to do with not just the team composition, but also the way strategy plays into it, right? And part of that strategy in general, other than like who gets an over when or like who goes out when, do we maintain like a left-right combo, is just the fact that the base of our strategy is that Shreyas backs himself to do anything. Like we've seen videos of Ponting telling Shreyas to do something and Shreyas doing exactly the opposite, then looking at Ponting saying, hey, it worked. And I think that rub of green that he has kind of filters through to his batting as well. And that happened yesterday. He was looking incredible. Those no-look sixes he hits are next level. Like he knows the ball is in his slot. He's going to swing through the line and he doesn't care where it's going because he knows exactly where it's going to end up. And I think any game where one of Shaw, Iyer or Pant fire consistently. And I'm not saying like Pant goes in a blitzkrieg and makes like, 100 runs in 30 balls. I'm saying if he makes like something like a 40, 45 at a 150 strike rate, we start looking in good shape by the time we bowl.
You mentioned 3 names there, Shaw, Iyer and Pant, right? We've got a question from Narayan, who was here last week from the RCB. And his question is, should Rishabh Pant bat in the top 3, especially instead of Dhawan? Bit of a waste playing him at 4, especially in Sharjah. So maybe Kartik, you could give us your thoughts on that one, and then maybe Achal can chip in.
I think it's unfair on Dhawan because he played a decent knock just yesterday. I think Pant is coming at number 4, which is not really low for him. The only concern for me at the moment is that if Dhawan keeps on playing and doesn't get out, if that situation comes, it could be a problem. But till he is managing a decent start, and after that we are getting Iyer at 3 and Pant at 4, I think it's a proper position for each of them at the moment.
Interesting, because Dhawan got out yesterday and Shaw was still going, but Iyer walked in. So we weren't even going for the left hand, right hand. And Iyer actually walked in at 3, whereas I thought maybe Pant should have walked in at 3 because the left hander had got out. So Achal, maybe you could comment on that one.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, I agree. Like, maybe dropping Dhawan or like pushing him down to 3 or 4 and putting Pant and getting Pant to open would be great for Pant because he gets to play a lot more balls. He gets to bat in the power play, which I think is secretly what he wants. His style of play warrants it. But at the same time, he's that very necessary glue in that middle order, right? Imagine if you have Dhawan, who takes historically, like let's say a couple of overs to just start striking the ball. Then you have Hetmeyer, who is iffy. And then you have a Stoinis, who very much depends on who's on the other end with him to score runs. And let's say Pant gets out early one game. It's the same old classic Delhi situation where you're 20 for 3 with 6 overs gone. And kind of what we saw in the first game this season, right? So I think 4 might not be ideal for Pant, but it's ideal for the team, and he's doing it. And he kind of faces the same situation when he plays for India as well, right? I don't think Pant playing for India should come in at number 4 or number 5. He should bat higher than that because he has the game to clear the infield. But I think it would be unfair on Dhawan. I think Dhawan's role is also like Kartik mentioned, it's to stay set in the power play, and if he doesn't score beyond that, it's fine if he goes because we have some firepower coming up. The only thing that concerns me about Dhawan, though, is the moment the spinners come on after the power play is done, he seems like he's batting in a completely different track. I think he struggles with his timing. We saw yesterday he was playing a completely unwarranted shot to get out. And it's not how many runs Dhawan scores. It's not how many, what his strike rate is that bothers me. It's how he gets out that bothers me. And I think Prithvi Shaw and Shikha Dhawan take turns getting out cheaply in really crappy ways.
Very, very interesting. So, DJ, before I come to you to wrap with any other listener questions, it's been a roller coaster, 13 years, etc. We at the time this is going to release, I think the match will be just about starting. But Delhi plays RCB on Monday. Both teams that have failed to do well in years past. Both teams that have started well. I'm going to come to you guys one at a time. Prediction for the RCB game and then prediction for the season. Achal?
I think we're going to edge RCB just a little bit. not because our batting is any better than theirs. I think that top order might just be a little bit stronger with Padikkal, Kohli, Finch and AB being their top 4. But I think our middle overs bowling and our death bowling edges them out a fair bit.
And then where is Delhi going to end the season?
I'd say top 3 for sure. We're going to make the playoffs, especially if we continue playing this way. And I think Parth Jindal also mentioned that if we don't make the playoffs this year, them as a management unit have failed, which is a really interesting thing.
I didn't hear a clear prediction. I hear top 3, but not winners, which means second or third. Is that the prediction?
I'm just trying to,
I see you avoiding, so I'm putting you
behind.
Number 2, fence sitting on the Edges and Sledges cricket podcast.
Number 2, so reach the finals and lose. Kartik, let me ask you, RCB game and then the prediction for the season?
RCB game should be interesting because I think RCB has this flaws. I didn't really see them being very clinical except the last one. I think SRH lost rather than RCB winning. Second one, they lost. Third one, they won. So fourth one was their most clinical performance, which they put in. So I think Delhi might edge them in the bowling department because, yes, they have bought in Udana, but I think other than that, and Saini, I think those 2 are the only threats I see with Chahal. So Chahal being Chahal, I think Delhi should edge it.
And what about for the season? Where is Delhi going to end? You got to pick a number between 1 and 8.
I think this is the season because we're seeing everything in this year. So I think the thing that we should see is Delhi lifting the trophy finally. And if not Delhi, I want to see a new champion. At least that's the least hope I have from this season. Also, have we wished Rishabh Pant happy birthday?
Oh yeah, happy birthday.
Oh man, what a day.
Well said. Good call out. I love that you said first. I was hoping somebody would, but it is very interesting. I love that pretty much all Delhi fans I know, and myself included, I always want Bangalore to win or Punjab to win unless they're playing us because we just want a new champion. So anybody but Mumbai, anybody with CSK is the new motto for the year. DJ, are there any other listener questions we had, or are we done with? Are we good to wrap up?
There's one more question, which is an interesting one. It's something that's been haunting us from the very start of the auction, right? And it's Aditya Kulkarni is written, and he asks, we all know Jinx isn't there in the playing 11. Ironically, he sits beside Ponting, and it seems like he plays an important role in team management. The curiosity is what exactly his role is. Kartik, what is Jinx doing in that setup?
I think he's a very high-profile backup. I think we are paying too much for a backup player if he's that. I understand the versatility of Rahane, where he can bat from 1 to 5. So if Shaw gets injured, Dhawan gets injured, Iyer or Pant, you can just slot Rahane in and hope he would give you a good performance. So I understand that versatility factor, but I feel he's too expensive a player to be just warming up bench. And DC would have known that they already have such a packed order that there would be no space. I think still they could find a space if they want. Admire isn't firing. I am really concerned about that. He's not the best fielder. Has already dropped a few catches. So that could be an option. Otherwise, Carey could be there, another option in that slot. Or they could just play one more all-rounder in Daniel Sams. He's looking like good in the nets. So maybe that's an option they might consider.
One thing we should talk about in the future that I'm really intrigued by is this idea of mid-season moves and loans and transfers and things like that, right? Because a lot of leagues do it. And I said this on our Discord chat yesterday for anybody who's listening, but Sandeep Lamichan is also too high-profile a backup, right? So he's just sitting there on the bench. Could you theoretically at some point in the future have a model where Delhi, to recoup some costs, loan him out to other teams with a condition in the loan clause that says he doesn't play against Delhi, right? Things like that, which happen in Europe in soccer all the time, right? Where if you loan to a different league, then when you play Champions League soccer, you can't play against the home team, host team, things like that. A long way to go for the rules of the league, but I think that would be interesting. And then equivalently, who could we bring in if we needed, say, an Indian quick? And Hyderabad has all the riches in Indian quicks. They loan us a player like that, but we don't play him against them. So food for thought. If the any IPL officials are listening and want to bring us on as consultants, we are available.
We should send a clip of this to Dada and just be like, boss, make this happen. Because it's super interesting. It's
knowing our luck, just steal the idea and not give us credit.
I think they brought the mid-season window. They bought that slot in, but nobody does that trade. Yeah. I think IPL has that slot, but nobody prefers that option. I'm just surprised someone like Basil Thampi might be starting for many teams. He's just warming the bench for Sunrisers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, Kartik, that's a good point. We'll wrap here, but I think that's the interesting piece, is that right now teams are too worried about strengthening another side. Maybe at some point, and that's because all 8 teams are really good, and that's what makes the IPL great. Maybe at some point you'll have 12, 15 teams where there are some that need more help. And so the top 3 or 4 teams don't mind loaning a player to a bottom team because they're not really a threat. Today, every other team is a threat, right? We saw that wagon wheel where every team has beaten every other team basically already this season. So that brings us to a wrap, guys. We could talk probably for 3 hours about the Delhi Capitals, but we are so glad you guys joined us. 3 wins out of 4 matches. Big RCB game coming up. Let's hope this is the year Kartik's prediction comes right. If it does, you heard it here first on Edges and Sledges. Shreyas Iyer will be lifting the trophy in 2020 because we believe that's the time. Achal, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your quarantine in London. Kartik, great to chat with you as well. Thank you guys for joining us. Stay connected with us on the Discord channel, on Twitter. We're at One Tip, One Hand, etc. DJ, actually, before we wrap up, do you want to do a quick Fantasy League update? Do you have that ready? I know it's probably tough for you because you're in 52nd or 56th or something.
Yeah, I'm actually opening up the Fantasy League just now, but as I told you, I actually look forward to your fantasy update every week just so that you say the words Jai Pathan, Jai Ali Baba.
I specifically asked you to do the update this week, so I don't have to say the team name. It's the weirdest team.
Right, I'm just going to do a quick update. I am currently sitting pretty at rank 65 out of 115 people. So, I guess making some progress. But number 1 is Abhilash Super Singh with 5,351.5 points. Number 2 for 3 weeks in a row in the top 3, Jai Pathan, Jai Ali Baba. Wow. Oh, Jali Baba, actually. Fantastic. With 5,311 points, man. He's also got a lot of, or he or she has actually got a lot of transfers saved up as well. So well done to them. And number 3 is Dip Nan 4KL. Okay. Dip Nan 4KL. Okay.
You see why I made you do it this week? It's so tough to read the team names, man.
Yeah, but I don't know where to break that name. That's the problem. It's Dipnan 4KL. So with 5,156.5 points at rank 3. So guys, really interesting. It is continuing to be a close fought affair. Ashwin, I don't know where you're sitting or where I'm sitting or where Varun's sitting because I don't think we're in the top 30 even.
Excuse me. Varun is at 19. He had a great day today. He had Warner captain, Quinton de Kock vice captain. I had Warner captain, but no Quinton de Kock. So Varun's at 19, I'm at 25. So speak for yourself when you say you're down low. Achal, I see you're at 27, so you're creeping up there.
Oh, not bad.
Kartik, are you playing in the league? And if so, what's your team name? Let's see where you are. I don't see where you are.
I just missed out this time around.
Oh, he's not
playing. No. You've got to win it, man.
Achal, start working on your favorite Sledges against DJ. But that officially now brings this very long episode to a wrap. Great connecting with you guys. Thank you for being on Edges and Sledges. Like I said, on all social media at One Tip, One Hand, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're most active on Twitter, but we also have a great Discord channel, which you can find the link to in the show notes and on our Twitter channel. Join us there. We have lots of great banter.
And leave a review, guys. Leave a review. It helps everyone find the show. I know Achal has already reviewed us, so has Kartik. And if you guys haven't, make sure you do it now. Okay, see you next.
Good point. Unless you're not going to give us 5 stars. If you're not going to give us 5 stars, maybe don't review it. I'm just kidding. Please do leave a review, and if you enjoy it, give us 5 stars. That's it, guys. We will see you midweek.
Now sound like Uber drivers.
Leave reviews so that you counterbalance those reviews we get from Australian listeners. I don't understand.
Yeah, we have one bad review, so let's hope that. Hey, thanks, guys.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुटबॉल.
Presenting Football Shortball, a show about 3 friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes 3, maybe even 5. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my 2 sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Kartik Iyer.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Iyer. But you're a Fulham supporter, so whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumors, top controversies, fantasy football picks, and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Shootball every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.